Hello, everyone. My name is Malcolm Eastman, and today I'm going to show you guys DHCP snooping in Cisco Packet Tracer. So first thing, what is DHCP snooping, right? And why would we use it? So DHCP snooping is a feature that you can implement on network devices that will inspect DHCP messages. So here I have three PCs set up, PC1, PC2, and PC3. And these three PCs will want DHCP addresses, right? And DHCP addresses are addresses that will be assigned dynamically instead of statically, right? Where statically would be what would be us going into the computer and assigning it an IP address, right? By manually typing it in, our DHCP server will allocate those IP addresses dynamically, right? So there's no configuration. Every time a end host requests a IP address, it'll get one from the server from the pool, right? But everybody that requests a DHCP address is not always, a legitimate end user within our networks. Sometimes the nefarious hackers could be in our network or trying to get into our networks by using DHCP or just trying to cause havoc. So that's where we would implement DHCP snooping to inspect those messages and make sure they're legitimate, right? And then they would send along those DHCP messages to the DHCP server to then get a message. Then that message that would contain or that packet that would contain our DHCP address, DNS server, the default router would then be sent back to that end host to then use to connect to the network, right? Because there's also a particular attack that hackers would use, which would be called DHCP exhaustion, right? And that basically is where an attacker will constantly send DHCP messages and the server will respond. And before you know it, your whole entire DHCP pool has been exhausted. That's why they call it DHCP exhaustion, right? And then that will also lead to like a denial of service because now your computers can't get on a network because there's no DHCP addresses available because this hacker has exhausted our pool, right? So cool. That's DHCP snooping, right? And why would we use it? Now, how do we set it up? So if we take a look here at our little lab in Packet Tracer, I have two switches, three end hosts, which would be our three PCs, and our router. So for this lab, I'm going to configure our router as our DHCP server. So I'm going to go into our router, right? And then I'm going to open up the CLI. I'm going to full screen it. And it's going to ask you, would you like to go into the initial configuration dialog? I'm going to hit no. I'm going to hit enable, right, which is going to send us into exif prep mode. And then I'm going to do conf t. Now, as you can see, I used shortened versions or the short, I guess, abbreviation of configure and enable. You can just do that instead of typing out the whole word. It's much, much quicker than typing out the entire word. So I put conf t instead of configuration terminal, and I put en instead of enable, right? And I was able to get into the two different modes. Very simple. So the first command that I want to do is host name, right? I just want to change the host name. This is, whoops, I forgot. I didn't type R1, and now we've changed our host name. Obviously, there's a lot more that goes into initial configuration. We change the host name. We would maybe add users. We would add our enable secret passwords. But for the purpose of that lab, I'm just really going to focus on DHCP snooping, right? So we want to configure a DHCP pool. So how do we do that? We're going to do IP DHCP pool 1. Now we are in our DHCP pool and we want to configure it, right? So first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to hit network. And this network command is basically we're going to define what the DHCP pool is, right? Where the address, what's the name of the address? I'm sorry, what's the network ID? What's the subnet mask? So 192.10.10.0, right? That's our network. And then the subnet mask is going to be a WAC24, which is 255.255.255.0, right? So in this DHCP pool, for instance, which is pretty much a common pool that you're going to see, I'm pretty sure at home, you have probably a WAC24 subnet mask, which is about 253 usable addresses. And a WAC24 is actually 255 addresses. But there's two addresses that are always going to be unusable. The network ID, for this case, is going to be 192.10.10.0. What that is, that's just telling us the name of the network. That's not a usable address. And then the second address is going to be the last address in the pool, which would be 192.10.10.255, which is our broadcast ID. We only use this address if we want to send a message to every single device on that network, right? So like you could ping, well, let's say I decide to ping 192.10.10.255. It would send a ping message to every single device that's on our network, right? So I'm gonna hit enter. Now we have our pool, right? We've got the addresses, we've got the network ID. We're not done yet. We want to do a DNS server, right? So I'm just gonna put a random DNS server just for the purpose of the lab. And that command is going to be DNS server, right? So as you see, I didn't even have to type up the entire name of that command, right? All I did was put DN, DN, and then put server, right? And it completed it for me. Now, let's say I don't know the name of the command, right? I'm confused. What's the name of the command? I'm gonna hit shift. Well, sorry, I'm gonna hit shift and I'm going to use the question mark command, right? And question mark, and it's going to show me all the list of the available commands within this particular configuration. So I'm in the DHC. So this would look a lot different if I just had the configuration terminal open. But since I'm in the DHCP pool configuration, I have all these commands open. So it's gonna vary from when you're in interface. It's going to vary to when you're just in the configuration terminal. It's going to vary from when you're in here, all right? Or let's say you're configuring port security. This is all going to look different. So you hit that question mark, and this is going to show you the list of commands you have available to you. So let's go back to DNS. So I'm going to use 2.2.2.2, right? Just again for the purpose of the lab. Then I'm going to configure a default router, right? Again, so as you can see here, I got default router. That's a command, right? Default router. And I'm going to put df, hit tab, and this default router for this network is going to be 192.10.1, right? Which is pretty much a standard configuration you'll see for most networks. It's going to be that first usable address is pretty much going to be your default gateway, right? And in this case, that's our default gateway is all pretty much going to be our router, right? If you hit default gateway, think of router, right? But I'm not done on this router. I have two more commands to do. Another command that I have to do is actually outside of the pool. So I'm going to hit exit. And I want to make sure that 192.10.10.1 is put onto my router. How do I do that? I'm going to use the exclude address command on the router. So what that's going to do, if I have a DHCP pool configured on the router, and I also have the exclude address command configured on the router, what's going to happen is my router is not going to allocate that particular exclude address or excluded addresses, because I can do more than one address. It's not going to put those addresses on any device, right? It's not going to do it. So I'm going to put IP, DHCP, right? And again, let's say I'm lost. I hit tab, and it's going to tell me what else I can do. Exclude address, right? That's what I want. And I'm going to do the exclude address, right? 192.10.10.1, right? And again, if I wanted to do a pool, I can show you how to do that too. All I would do, let's say I want to exclude all the way to .10. What I would do is put 192.10.10.10, and I would hit enter, and it would exclude from 192.10.10.1 to .10. But I don't want to do that, so I'm good. One more thing I got to do before I exit out of this router. So by default, our router interfaces are off. We need to turn it on, right? So I don't know which one. I don't know which one it is. So I'm going to do show IP interface brief. And I know it's 0/0/0 because that's the one I have connected to the switch. So I'm gonna do interface, and I'm using a shorten. I'm gonna shorten it. I don't have to type out the whole word interface. We want to be quick. We want to be efficient. And I'm gonna do, instead of typing out gigabit, I'm gonna put G 0/0/0, and I'm gonna do no shut. Now it's up, right? Because it's connected. That interface was connected to a switch, the switch. I wouldn't have got that alert if it wasn't connected to anything. The command would just go through. But since it's connected to something, I got a syslog message, right? That's telling me it's up. So now I'm pretty much done with the router. Actually, no, I'm not. Excuse me. I totally forgot. I have to go back into that interface. So G0/0/0, and I actually have to put that IP address on that interface. So I'm going to do the command IP add, and the address was 192.10.10.1. What's the subnet mask? WAC24, cool. 255.255.255.0, right? And you're going to hit enter. Oh my God. I am so sorry. I got a 0. Boom. Now that IP address is now added to that interface. Now we're going to hit exit. Now we are pretty much done with our router. Okay, cool. Now we got our two switches, switch 2, switch 1. Now we're going to configure DHCP snooping, right? So when we're configuring DHCP snooping, we actually have to log into each interface, right? And turn on DHCP snooping and tell the switch which which interfaces are actually going to be trusted. So what we do, we trust the interfaces that are going up. So when you ever see a network diagram, downward interfaces are generally the ones that are going to be connected to end devices, right? So in DHCP snooping, we're not trusting those. Every single packet that you get in regards to DHCP snooping, if it's not trusted, you're going to inspect it. But if the IP address, if the interface is trusted, then it's just going to send it along. And generally, we want to trust those interfaces that are connected to another network device. So again, I'm going to trust this interface here and this interface here. These other interfaces are going to be untrusted by default. So you don't actually have to put no trust unless you're deleting a trusted interface on a switch, because by default, those interfaces are going to be untrusted at the beginning. So I'm going to go into switch 2. Right? And I need, so this one right here is going to be the one that's trusted. And that is, I think this is G02. Yeah, G0 gigabit internet, gigabit interface 2. We're going to go into the CLI. Enable conf T. And then we're going to go into the interface. So interface G0/2. And now we're going to turn on DHCP snooping on this interface. So IP DHCP snooping, it's on now. Now DHCP snooping is on this interface, but it's still going to be off. I'm sorry, untrusted by default. So what we want to do, we want to tell the switch this is a trusted interface. Oh my God, my apologies. I didn't put myself into the interface. It took me out of the interface. Sorry about that. So I'm going to go back into the interface. And now that interface G02 is now trusted. So there is also another command that I want to do. So now this command I can do just on the configuration terminal, right? So it's going to be no IP DHCP snooping information option. If this command was not turned, well, not saying was not, we didn't put no, I would get error messages every time that this switch gets a DHCP message. So we want to make sure we turn off this particular command on our switch, right? So we're going to hit exit. Now I'm done with switch 2. Out. Now we're going to go to switch 1 and do the same thing. We're going to our CLI, and I believe this one is G01. This is G01. So now we're going to open up our command line again. Enable conf T, and we're going to go into interface G0/1, and we're going to do IP DHCP snooping trust. And then I'm going to turn on DHCP snooping. Because when you turn on DHCP snooping, it just it takes you right out of the configuration of that interface and puts you right back into the configuration terminal, right? So I'm going to put no IP DHCP snooping information option. Now let's think about what we've done so far. We've configured our router as a DHCP server. Switch 1 and switch 2 both have DHCP snooping enabled, right? And we know that our trusted interfaces are the uplink interfaces that are facing upward, and our down facing interfaces are the ones we're not going to trust, because we want to make sure we inspect every single message that we get from a client, right? Because these would be our DHCP clients, right? These are the people that want our DHCP addresses. So how do we actually make sure that this is working right? So we're going to go into PC1, right? And I'm going to go into desktop, and I'm going to go to our command prompt, right? I'm going to open it up, and I'm going to put IP config, IP config /renew. Sorry. See that. Sometimes packet tracer takes a while, but never mind, it did it right off. It did it at the beginning. So as you can see here, I have our DHCP addresses, right? So it's got the address, it's got the subnet mask, it's got the default router that I set up, or default gateway, and it's got the DNS server, right? I want to also check, let's check PC2 as well. I want to check PC2 as well. We're going to go again and do that, go to desktop, and we're going to go to command prompt, and we're going to do IP config we'll go wait and see. Oh, and we got our IP address again from here, right? So again, it's working, right? Let's go to PC3. But with PC3, I want to show you it in simulation mode. So I'm going to do PC3. I'm going to open up. I'm going to do the same thing. Go to command prompt, and I'm going to do IP config. And I'm going to hit play. So it's going to send it here, send to our first switch. And this switch is going to then inspect the DHCP message. It's going to send it forward. It did send it. It flooded it to all other devices. But that since that wasn't intended for them, they just disregarded it. Our router gets it, sends it back to the first one. And then it sends it again to our next switch, right? Because it's been sent from here. And then it's going to send it here, forward it. And then Let's go to real time. And it got the DHCP message allocated to it. So as you can see, we have configured DHCP snooping on our switches, and as well as we created DHCP server, right, for router one. Right, so our router was our DHCP server. And again, the reason we want to implement this in all of our networks is because we want to make sure that who's getting these, the people who are getting these messages or the end hosts that are getting these messages are actually a part of our network. They're not a malicious hacker. They're not somebody who's trying to do a DHCP exhaustion attack, which is basically where they exhaust our pools, right? Which leads to denial of service, right? So, because again, remember, if our DHCP servers don't have any addresses to allocate to our end users are going to get our ARP addresses, not ARP addresses, sorry, PIPA addresses, and those PIPA addresses don't connect to the network, right? They're local addresses, linked local addresses, which don't connect out to the internet, right? And pretty much, I can't think of any corporate business, public, private sector that's not using the internet for their daily operations. So you need to make sure that your end devices can connect to the internet securely. But we also want to make sure that when we give out these DHCP addresses, they're going to the people that actually need them, that are actually a part of our networks, right? So again, remember, uplink interfaces are going to be the trusted ones because those are usually the ones that are leading to other network devices. Just switches the routers. And then our downlink interfaces are the ones that are not going to be trusted, right? So yeah, that's DHCP snooping in a nutshell. I hope you learned something. I hope you were able to, understand everything I explained, everything I went over. And I appreciate you watching and following along with me. If you have any questions, reach out to me on LinkedIn, right? Or you can reach out to me at malcolmeastman.tech. And let me know if you have any questions. Other than that, you guys all have a great day, and I'll see you next time.